I wanted to take a minute today at the beginning of the podcast and say thank you to our sponsor, Huber Engineered Woods. Huber has actually been a sponsor of the podcast since 2020 when we decided to start this little endeavor. Without our sponsors, this content is probably not something that happens. But I think the best part about having Huber as a partner on this is it's an incredibly authentic alignment. Peter, Steve, and I all use Huber Woods. I've been using Advantech Subfloor for coming on probably 21 years now. I've been using Zip System and Zip System with the insulation on the back, the Zip R, since 2013. It's a system that I believe in. That systems approach where things play well together. They have design parameters that allow you to use their system for what you're working on. It works. Their tech support's there. Their knowledge is there. I've never had an issue with their product, and it's a great thing that they've decided to sponsor the podcast. So thank you, Huber Engineered Woods.
Alrighty, folks. So this episode of the Unbuilded Podcast is sponsored by Allura Fiber Cement Siding. You might have remembered we used that out at our Build Show Build Boston site. It is in fact a fiber cement siding, which means it carries a Class A fire resistant rating. It is mold and mildew resistant, pest resistant, and the latest technology coming out of Allura is their new 10 textured wood panel schemes that now give that look of wood but retain the benefits of the cement siding.
You have to thank them in some way.
So, with that being said, thank you, Allura, for sponsoring this week's Unbuilded Podcast. Well, good afternoon, folks. Steve Basic here for the Unbuilded Podcast. Yes, it's late in the afternoon. I'm very tired, but today we are going to talk about the naivete of building science. Yes, I said that correctly. Naivete. I am joined by my two co-hosts, Mr. Peter Yost.
Yo.
And Mr. Jake Bruin.
The dulcet tones of Stephen Basic.
The dulcet tones. I love that.
You know, really.
I do.
You know what pisses me off in the world? No, you're going to love this.
I like it when the editor laughs, by the way.
I can't friggin' win. Because if I come on here and say, hey, good morning, America, why are you going to yell in the microphone? So if I come on and I just be nice, gentle Steve.
Dulcet tones was a compliment.
Now, yeah, but you said it as a joke. Right?
Just because I'm trying to
There's nothing that Jake doesn't do matter. That's not double entendre.
And because our wives don't listen, the same thing at home. Like if I'm yelling, my wife said, why are you be so angry? Why are you so mad? What's going on? And then if I'm quiet, why are you so quiet? It's like, well, who do you want? I'm confused.
Is this your idea of the naivete in construction?
I don't. I'm totally off track here. Totally off track.
This is amazing.
I'm trying
this is
to.
the best start to a podcast we've had in a long time.
I can't. I can't. But it's not just you two. You two clowns I can tolerate.
Steve, there's a hidden message if it's not just the two of us.
No, it's whoever I come across. Like if I'm not yelling and people telling me to shut up and relax, then if I'm quiet, it's like, why are you so quiet? What's wrong? What's going on? It's like this. How about shut up? Don't you have an emotional roller coaster in your life? I have highs and I have lows. Damn.
You know, I think that one of the reasons we do this podcast is like personal group therapy. Don't you think?
Could be.
Could be.
Could be. I tell people, like, they're like, why are you always just such a smart ass?
Hey.
I said, because I don't want to go to jail.
What, you know, I've got a groovy idea since we're sort of doing
groovy idea. Okay, dude, what's up, man? Yo, tell me your gnarly idea, bro.
Since we're doing touchy-feely stuff, let's talk about mistakes that we've made.
Well, I don't think they're mistakes. I think it's the naivete of building science. And the reason I say that, because a mistake means that we did something and it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The naivete suggests that we did stuff that could have been later in life, we've come to understand could have potentially been wrong, but it isn't. Right? These are all the things that I question about when people say, well, you shouldn't do this because of that. Okay, well, I've never had that happen, right? And beyond the ones I want, I'm going to throw spray foam out there. People say, hey, you can't use spray foam. It makes people sick. Okay, I don't know anybody documented that has been sick from spray foam. Now, I'm not trying to bump up our list, and don't go writing in saying Steve's an idiot.
We're not belittling anyone who
I'm not belittling anybody. I sincerely don't know anybody that is linked to it. I've talked to your brother, certified pulmonologist, and he says it's a really hard link to make.
Yeah.
I've talked to one of the best guys in the spray foam world and asked him, this is a guy that goes into litigation over spray foam. And he says he is not aware of a documented case. So what am I to do when people say, should I use spray foam? I don't have any bad experience with it. I've had one failure in 30 years, and we knew what it was, and it was a new foam. It wasn't the foam we would normally use. And it failed because the new foam needed a different temperature range that we weren't aware of, even though the rep was there, and he screwed up. But beyond that, there's things like my example is years ago, I did a house for a friend. He wanted a conditioned attic. I said, we got to bring the duct.
Hold on, wait. I want to talk about the foam failure thing too. People point at that and go, well, there's a failure. Every single product that we use can have a failure if you're not QCing your jobs.
Yeah.
I had a foam failure at my personal house, and I caught it right away, and we fixed it. I've had a brand new roof that was installed have a leak because they didn't install it properly. Every single thing that we do relies on proper installation.
Right.
So if you're not QCing or QAing your job, then that's on you as the builder. The installer is supposed to do it correctly. Yes, there might be higher risk with some products, like there might be air quality issues. There might be other issues if it goes undiscovered. But if you're not taking care of your project as the builder, that's a your fault thing.
But I think there's a whole category of these naive actions that people just assume are regular, right? Because even you, when you say, well, spray foam, it's a mixture out there that has to be designed and fully coordinated at the nozzle, right? I don't know if you're aware of it. I did a video, met with the guy. If that mix isn't within the standards, the machine shuts down.
Some machines. Yeah.
Well, the machine that he had shuts down.
Right.
Right. So it's not all of them, but then that gets back to, it's not spray foam that was the bad thing. It's the machinery that this person chose to use to install it, which goes back to Jake about our quality control. We didn't have the best insulator with the best equipment working on our job. Right.
Yeah.
So I guess part of it is there's these things that we say, well, you shouldn't do that. Well, why? I've never personally had a problem with it. Right. So we go to this house, friend of mine, and the house, I think it was probably like 4,500 square feet, 4 occupants, and he wanted a conditioned attic. So I said, yeah, no problem. Spray foam was kind of in emerging.
This is quite a number of years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is probably like late 90s, early 2000s.
Yep.
Right. And I said,
you guys
sure.
are both way older than me.
And yeah. So you're born.
In fairness, I was in the industry at that point, but I was like poking at you.
But I was like, yeah, there's spray foam. We'll just spray foam the attic. So we blew like 11 inches of open cell. Now, the place where we're at, we're in the mountains in Massachusetts. It's over 6,000. It's probably close to like 6,500, 6,800 heating degree days. It's freaking cold where
it's a good solid zone 6 in the mountains there.
And if I went to Joe, John Straub, or you or Jake and said, hey, here's my plan. This is what I'm doing. These are the metrics of the location. You'd be like, what are you, nuts? You can't do that there.
You can't use air permeable.
And we did. And the first couple of years, I was like, I don't know enough about this. My friend's name is Joe. I was like, Joe, we need to core some holes. Maybe every year we'll go and we'll pick some spots. We cored them and it was dry as a bone. Yeah. And it was always dry as a bone.
And you and I and Nathan.
We went to that house to talk about it and see it. And we cored some holes.
We did.
They were dry as a bone. And he's still living in that house some 25 years later, and he's never had a problem.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying go spray open cell foam because it doesn't matter.
Is it
what I'm saying?
A monoslope south-facing roof?
No,
okay.
It's a pretty cut up roof with some dormers.
My memory
and stuff.
being up in there is it's pretty steep.
It is pretty steep. It's probably a 9.
Yeah.
8 or 9.
No, there was nothing about it that would say if you quarter on one side or the other would be different.
Yeah. And so that one, and another one was we did a passive house early on. It was a 12-inch wall. We sprayed 2 inches of closed cell against the plywood, and then we did all blown in insulation for the remaining 10 inches, which again, if I showed that to somebody in a design review, they would be like, what are you, stupid? You have to have this 60-40 rule, and you're not even close to that.
Yeah, not even remotely close.
This house has had some remodeling. They did have a water leak at a hose bib where we had to open up the wall. And I asked the builder, was there any evidence of damage that was not linked to the hose bib? He said the wall was freaking dry as a bone. So again, it's these things where I still worry and I have the fear, and I'm not suggesting you do this, but there's things that happen out there that don't quite align with everybody's thinking.
Yeah. I think one of the things that happens is that buildings are a lot more forgiving than we sometimes give them credit for. I only worked on one house when I was a remodeler builder with my brothers in Seacoast, New Hampshire, that had forced air systems. And I know when we worked on that building, we totally screwed things up because we didn't know anything about forced air. But I know we got away with a number of ways that we worked on it, not because we did it right, but because we just got away with it. And in retrospect now, looking backwards, it's that a lot of the forgiveness in buildings is when you have very little moisture pressure coming from occupant activities. You mentioned in that 4,500 square foot house, there was four
occupants. So that's a person at 1,150.
Yeah, that's that might
high.
Be part of.
Yeah, I'm guessing now it's 2.
It's 2
because it's 25 years later.
Yeah.
So that's a good point.
And
that's
and
the variable that we can't.
Joe and I went and investigated when I was at Building Science Corporation. It was a community of very small houses that were multi-gen for the most part. And the one we went in, it was like 1,600 square feet. And there was like 8 people living in there, taking showers. They had a pet, and they cooked all of their meals for the family there. So
I went during COVID to a multifamily development in Brattleboro that was having moisture problems. And so I took 5 units and, profiled them and did blower door tests on the whole 9 yards. And every single time that there was more than 5 occupants, those attics were just loaded with mold. Absolutely. And it turns out that because it was COVID, everybody's home all the time and they were cooking a lot of meals. They had a recirc fan over top of a propane cooktop and a propane oven. And they were basically running one or the other all the waking hours. Crazy. So that attic was just absolutely loaded. And you go next door to where there's somebody living by himself. It was a nurse working at the hospital. Where is he during COVID? He's at the hospital all the time. Yeah. His attic, you could have turned it into a living space. Yeah. So that is one of the big variables that doesn't show up when we talk about building performance quite a bit.
The loading of occupants. This is probably a decade ago when I first met Joe. He was telling me that it was Building Science Corp got a sudden spike in phone calls from the state of Colorado, and it was always condensation on windows when they hadn't had condensation on windows. And he's like, it took us like 3 months to realize the first question we needed to ask was, how many pot plants are you growing? Because it was right after it became legal to grow weed and to have weed. And like, it was just like everybody just started their own grow operations in their houses, and they were dumping so much moisture into their buildings that it was just like, oh, we have condensation, and nobody could figure out that we changed this remarkable thing about our building, that we're growing 50 plants inside this house all of a sudden that we never grew plants before. He was like, yeah, it took us like 3 months to figure out. We needed to ask, how many pot plants do you have growing in your house? How many 5 foot tall pot plants do you have in your house?
I've got a building assessment form. I'm going to add that question to the mix.
It's legal in a ton of states now.
I remember really early on, for many, many years, I did a green remodeling 2-day thing for Yestermorrow up in Warren, Vermont. And we would always, first day we would learn a lot of building science, and it was Saturday and Sunday. And then Sunday morning, we'd go to a local house, and Yestermorrow would line up a local person that was willing to have, 12 to 20 students crawl through their house, filling out a building assessment form. Because I told them I'd try to help, understand how
Who the hell signs up for that?
Yeah, it was funny. We found somebody.
It's Vermont.
Each of 10 years. Yeah.
People's Republic of Vermont.
Yeah, there you go. It's part of it. So this is probably 4 years into the process, and I've been doing a blower door and doing infrared for quite a while. And we're in this house, and I'm saying, yeah, look down here at the bottom before you even do the blower door. Because of stack effect, I'm picking up the cold air leaking in with the infrared camera.
We pause real quick. If you're watching and not listening, you can date how old Peter is, because he's signifying the IR camera by a one-handed operation, because that's how they used to be made and only made that way. Now they're a two-handed operation, like a normal camera.
Well, if I could really date myself, it would be the original.
You had to put fluid.
The original iron camera, 75 pounds. You had a liquid nitrogen pack on the back when you did the.
Continue. Sorry. So,
I said, okay, now let's go to the top of the house, and of course, I'm looking and I'm thinking, I don't see anything. How can it be leaking cold air there and I'm not picking it there? And that was the first time after 4 years of doing this that I realized that the warm air is leaking out at the top. I'm not going to see anything leaking. When you turn on the blower door, you get to see it.
Then it comes back in.
But it took 4 years for me to, I understood stack effect, but in terms of the results that I got during a building assessment, I thought, how could you be so stupid, not to carry the concept through to how a blower door and an infrared camera works? It was embarrassing. Is that what the naivete of building science? Does that qualify?
Go for it. Yeah.
No,
I'm good. No, but I just think there's a lot of things out there that we just assume are right. And there's instances where they're proven wrong, but nobody ever talks about that. Or there's people that just, the naivete could be the inverse. There's a lot of people that just assume things that because they've heard somebody else say it, right? And people say, well, drywall can't be an air barrier. Go ahead, put your lips up there and blow. I'll watch. Let me see. Right? It's
well, I'm using our podcast company here doesn't like to have unsponsored cans of drink where you can see them. So I'm using a black piece of sill sealer to block what I'm drinking here. The number of times that I've heard that sill sealer is an air barrier or can be used as an air barrier, you can put your lips up to that and blow through it. And the fact that I would hold it up and blow through it is not even how it works. It's a horizontal movement of air. It's not a vertical movement of air because the air pressure isn't a vertical system there. I think if they wanted it to be, now, Pete and I read the label before I tore this off of there. It actually says air management. It
says reduces air infiltration.
Also, the thing that I like to point out to people that constantly causes people to scratch their head, the code says that if you're going to use sill sealer, you don't have to use treated plates. Also, you don't have to use treated plate or sill sealer if you use naturally durable wood in that place. And it lists like 4 different wood species.
Cedar or something?
Not cedar. One of them is black locust, but I can never remember the other 3. Okay. There's 4 that it lists. And actually, now that I say that, cedar might be one of them.
That's interesting because the difference between sort of the rot resistance of cedar compared to black locust is what we use for railroad ties.
Yeah.
It's.
I don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Peter told me a really interesting fact about black locust that I'm going to have you. Black locust and honey locust, why they have such large thorns on them.
It's an interesting evolutionary. Black locust, I assume the same is true for honey locust, but the thorns are really long. I mean, they're really, really aggressive. And in this news piece I was listening to, it said that's vestigial. It's a leftover trait. When we had woolly mammoths, black locusts had those long thorns to keep woolly mammoths from attacking black locust trees. There are no longer any woolly mammoths, but we still have these really long.
Still have the protection device.
The protection device. It hasn't been dropped yet from the.
Well, they're going to bring the woolly mammoths back.
Well, there you go.
So, black locusts.
Well, there you go. Black locusts are amazing.
Did you see it? The little mice that they injected with woolly mammoth, and
they made woolly
mammoth mice.
This one took a weird aside.
You know what they look like? They look like the Tribbles from Star Trek.
Yeah, they're like mini guinea pigs with like a mane.
Yeah.
It was pretty weird.
Pretty freaky looking.
So,
I can't believe there was something on the internet that I saw that you didn't. An old guy.
So the sill sealer conversation, I didn't use treated plate. I didn't use naturally durable, and I didn't use sill sealer at my personal house on interior partition walls on the ground floor. And it's in contact with concrete. And I had to go round and round with my inspector about it. And finally, he kind of just said, well, it's your house. Fine. And he let me.
So he was going to he wanted you to have?
Yeah.
I've never had an inspector
and
for.
Framing inspection for me is framing and rough, which means framing and MEP, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. So all of that is done. So if I had to swap plates on the interior, now there aren't that many interior walls on the ground floor. It's a pretty open floor plan on that first floor, but it still would have been a pain in the rear to have to swap.
And, we say that, I think you put it there as insurance, but frankly, I think that the further you get away from the perimeter, the chances of there being enough water to wick up through, it's just most of the load is coming off the roof.
And there's a large argument that it's the fact that piece that you're in contact with is just masonry and is a potential reservoir, period. But I agree that it's the further away you get.
Yeah. Now, after the moisture of construction's gone, if you're in the middle of the house, not very likely that it's going to take up a lot of water.
Yeah.
When we were talking about this, we realized that Pete didn't know the story of me screwing up my own house and why that slab is actually not in contact with the outside.
It's an elevated slab.
It is.
More ways than one.
It's a discontinuous with the exterior. So Steve designed my personal house, fully insulated slab, thermally broken slab. So it's supposed to have horizontal insulation with a vertical leg so that we have that perimeter curb and then a floating interior slab. And I'm getting on a plane in February of 18 to, or 19 to head to IBS. And my concrete guy calls and says, hey, I'm going to make a small change if you're okay with it. I think I can save us a bunch of money by doing this and slightly. And I was like boarding. And I was just like, okay, well, like thinking like, we'll talk about this. And then when I got off the plane and turned my phone back on, I had pictures that they had went ahead and placed the concrete without confirming with me. They poured a regular turn down slab. So there was insulation underneath of it, but no insulation around the perimeter whatsoever. And because of setbacks on...
And you're at grade. So this is a big thermal...
Yeah. And so range. I'm about to put a 2x8 wall with continuous exterior insulation on top of a non-thermally broken slab.
In Missouri.
And my wife and I were both adamant that we wanted exposed concrete floors on that elevation. So I called Steve and was like, this is going to be a problem. How am I going to fix this? And Steve said, you're going to lay another layer of insulation down and then pour a slab on top of it. So I have 2 concrete slabs at my personal
It's structurally
house.
sound.
It is. But Steve said, I'll save you some money. You don't have to put any steel in the second one.
Yeah. And
so it really was a topping.
From a building science perspective, it's probably one of the best slabs built because the insulation's in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
you've protected that insulation from rodents and insects and wildfire.
And that insulation is continuous now because the wall insulation comes down over top of that top plate and connects to it. Like I have full continuity in that layer. And the concrete guy was like, no, we got to put rebar in that. I said, no, it's not supporting anything. It's self-supporting. It's just it. That's the only thing that it has to deal with.
Do you have fewer hairline cracks in your finished slab, do you think?
Yeah.
Because you got like a bond break of that layer of insulation with a topping slab.
There is nowhere that you can put like a dollar bill down in it. Like there's one that's close. There's maybe 3 hairline cracks in the whole thing.
You basically, poured a finished floor as a topping as opposed to.
And while it cost me thousands of dollars, it did also afford me the opportunity to downset my exterior doors so that everything's flush. It did work out in the end, but try explaining there's an extra $6,000 in the budget.
I used to do, I was a technical climbing instructor for both rock climbing and ice climbing. And
humble brag.
There's
weren't we all?
There's a phenomenon. It's an example of negative reinforcement where if you successfully make it across an avalanche field, does that mean you understand the avalanche field, or does that mean you're more likely to think that you understand how avalanches work and continue to cross them?
I think you're lucky as hell.
Well, essentially, most of the people that consider themselves to be like mountaineering experts of getting across avalanche prone areas, it's just like they're lucky. And so, there's a number of guides that do all the requisite digging of holes to analyze it. And there are other guys who say, trust me, I've done this many, many times. And so you're being negatively reinforced to take risk because your assessment of the risk goes down with every time you successfully accomplish that task. Yeah. Scary.
Well, I think there's, we've illustrated some things that we've done that probably shouldn't have worked, but did. Mm-hmm. There's the other side of the coin of being naive that suggests that there's things out there that work very well that people don't believe in. Like if we post something about a rain screen, that's stupid. That's just a waste of money. Oh, look at these guys just trying to squeeze more out of the client or homeowner and not understanding that a rain screen, in my eyes, it's probably one of the last things I would let get engineered out of a project.
Yeah. And when I have a number of projects I've been involved in that are the European flush design. And if there was ever an example of, well, if you're not going to give the forgiveness of overhangs, then you absolutely have to do a rain screen because you've taken one really important mechanism for protecting that wall.
Probably the most important.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, there's the other one that always kind of fires me up is when you put up something of a product and people say, well, that's just crap, or wow, that's really expensive. And they don't realize like how long a company doesn't come out like Sega or Huber or any of them, Intello, and say, we're going to make a weather resistant barrier. Johnny, how do you think we should make it? Oh, well, I think we should do this and this. Okay. Yeah. Make that up and we'll sell it next week. Like it doesn't go that route. Mm-hmm. Right. When we were at Sega, I hung around and talked to the lab tech, and he was telling me, he said, we went through 127 versions before they settled on the way to make Myrex. Right. So you put something up, people say, well, that's just stupid. That's a waste of money. That's crap. Oh, okay. Because you're super smart. But this lab tech that built 127 versions before they settled on it doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
So 4 years of testing that they went through and
to
now
develop that product.
10 years of the product being on the market and them tweaking it while it was on the market. They have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah.
I think another trick in that is that, I think we know people that have gotten into manufacturing of building products from a route that has not, it's about business, it's about the material, but adding in the folks that have real science backgrounds, but have spent enough time in the field to connect those two. I think we would assume that if it's a big enough company, that it would be a given that there's adult supervision from each angle, like the business angle, the chemistry angle, what happens in the field angle. I think that it's almost the exception for a lot of enclosure projects for there to be that team arriving at a solution, as opposed to one of the influences simply winning out.
Yeah. And a lot of these companies, they have to just spend literally hundreds of thousands of dollars on testing.
Yeah.
And it's third-party testing to prove that their product is doing what they say it does. But yet Joe Schmo can write his comment and say, yeah, that's crap.
Steve and I went to do presentations to the Pressure-Sensitive Tape Council.
That's a riveting bunch if you ever get the chance.
Oh, it is a party.
But here's what's really interesting. They're all chemical companies.
Yeah.
And the portion of pressure-sensitive adhesive tapes that are made for the construction industry are small compared to a whole bunch of different industries. So we get people walking up to us, names we never recognize. They're chemical companies. And what they see is, oh, here's a new application of our tapes. They don't know anything about the building industry, but they know about how to make a tape. So that's another example of how, we have really big chemical companies that make materials for a whole bunch of different industries. It is not a given that they understand how to make that product be its best for a building application.
Well, it's interesting. We talked earlier on a different podcast, American Rockwell's coming back online.
Yep.
So when I was there, we were talking, and when I was walking through the warehouse, there was one called insulation and the other one had a different name to it. And it's like, what is all, and there was probably more of that than the insulation in the warehouse. And I was like, what is that? He goes, well, come to find out, the petroleum industry or oil extraction, drilling companies, they needed a fluffy, non-combustible material to line their wells with.
No kidding.
And our product is like a perfect product for them. So they're selling like 20 trucks a week
to
the petroleum industry, not even the building industry. They make insulation, but it's the difference, like tape. You could say I make tape, or I make a closure device that's self-adhesive. When you say that, it takes on a different world. Mm-hmm. The same as the insulation. It's like, oh, I make building insulation. No, you make a fire-resistant fluffy stuff, right? And that fire-resistant fluffy stuff can have some other stuff. Yeah. And there were some other areas that they're dabbling in arenas that are pretty crazy too, that have nothing to do with the building industry. But because they create that stuff, they have the ability to sell it in different markets and just reinterpret the use, not the product.
I think it's kind of cool because when I do the wing nut stuff, there's always people that pop up doing their own kind of things, trying to combine their understanding of how buildings work with proper application materials. And I just think that those kind of insights, like the guy from Australia that made that CNC molded sill piece, that's really cool. That he took a friend who had that type of business and figured out how to combine that to make a new sill piece. That's pretty cool.
That's pretty wild. I don't know. Are we done?
I'm feeling pretty good.
I want to bring one last thing to you guys' attention that I don't think you're aware of. So next week is Diarrhea Awareness Week.
Diarrhea Awareness.
Yes. It runs through the weekend.
Jeez. Now, I could see the conductor coming, but I didn't see that coming, and I should have.
Well, there you have it, folks.
Take us home, Steve.
That's it. The naivete of the building industry. I want to thank you, Mr. Jake Bruton, Mr. Peter Yost, for joining me this afternoon on what I felt was a very compelling topic and discussion. So I hope you all choose to continue to watch the Unbuilded podcast. And if you do have any questions, thoughts, or comments, please send them to
questions@unbuilditpodcast.com.
And again, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Have a nice day.
See ya.